He was called the eccentric of all eccentrics. He was born in 1913. A Jewish Hungarian. A lot of great minds came from that time. Johnny von Neumann, Edward Teller. He used to live out of his suitcase. He didn't have any relationships. He didn't care about materialistic possessions. We are talking about no other than the great, prolific, probably the most prolific of all mathematicians by collaboration, Mr. Paul Erdos. Professor Misha.
Okay, so Paul Erdos, and it's a great introduction. He was indeed the most prolific, or one of the most prolific
Collaborator, yes.
in collaboration, and he was probably since Euler, or including Euler, he was one of the most productive people. Also, he was so productive that there is a kind of a huge matrix of his cooperation with different people, and they introduced the metrics called Erdos number. So how far are you by collaboration from the famous Erdos? He was also the recipient of the Wolf Award.
It's true. Yeah.
Which is in 1983, which is Wolf Award, which probably at some point would be good to speak about. It's one of the most prestigious awards in mathematics. And yes, I absolutely agree with you. Hungary, and particularly Jewish Hungarians, produced a lot of people in his generation. They were punching basically quite above their weight for a relatively small country as Hungary was, or is. Well, I say was because when Erdos was born, it was still Kingdom of Hungary, which was 3 times bigger than modern Hungary. But still, even for the big Hungary or the small Hungary that it is now, they were really punching above their weight.
But they really, as you said, produced Johnny von Neumann. We have to speak about him at a certain point. When these people came to the States, and Erdos as well escaped to the States, knowing what the Nazi persecution what Nazis got in mind for him and the other Jews, when they came to the States, they were called Martians. Do you know about it? Because they said it's impossible that human beings can be so smart. The daughter of Johnny von Neumann gave a lecture. She wrote a book. She called it My Father the Martian. But Erdos was a Martian as well.
Yes. Well, first, by the way, he came to the UK,
Yes.
very, very young, about the age of 21. That was before Nazis, before the Germans came to Hungary. But the anti-Semitic situation in Hungary was already quite bad. So in spite of, his family was very assimilated, very
So they were
Hungarized, Magyarized. They even changed their German Jewish sounding name into the Erdos, which is
like von Neumann.
Hungarian.
Von Neumann is not the original name.
Von Neumann is kind of slightly different, because von Neumann was given as the phone was given by the Kaiser, by Franz Josef to the father of von Neumann. But with the Erdos, it was very interesting because people consider him as the Einstein of mathematicians. Having said that, Einstein himself was a mathematician, some people consider him as a mathematician. But Erdos, and what is kind of in a bit unfair to Erdos in person and to mathematicians in general, they're physicists of the same caliber. Maybe because of the production of the nuclear weapon, maybe of the other reasons, like Niels Bohr, like Einstein himself, like Planck, like many people. They're known. I wouldn't say the household names and everybody stop everybody on the street. They know them, but
it's
they know
more.
much.
It's
much
more. Yes, it's more popular type of subject. Probably sexier, easier to understand, probably, and much easier to, in a way, sell as some sort of a new age concept. When it comes, everything is quantum. People use quantum without even realizing what it means. Erdos was a mathematician. Mathematics is more abstract, is more esoteric in so many ways. But it's tremendous. It's tremendous output. It's unbelievable. I found an online site with him with his works from 1929 until 1989. Incredible. 60 years of papers, and it's only part of it. It's not the whole output. But apparently, by the way, according to Ron Graham, you know Ron Graham, the mathematician, of course. He was a very, very good friend of Erdos, and he dedicated a room in his house for the works of Erdos to collect his papers because he knew that Erdos is a traveler. He doesn't have any home, he doesn't have anything where he can store his papers. And he said that Erdos started publishing in 1932. That was the first publication of Erdos.
Yes, Erdos started to publish absolutely in 1932 when he was only 19. He immigrated from Hungary in 1934. He lived in the UK first, then he came to the United States. He was part of this kind of big immigrant community, people who ran away for one reason or another from the Nazis, Jewish and non-Jewish. And he was basically kind of thrown out of the United States. He was one of the people who ran away first from Europe,
Nazis,
from
and
Nazis,
then communism,
and then from
he
the
was
McCarthy.
accused of
Yes, apparently what happened is that he one of the reasons, one of the explanation was that he was called, and actually it attracts my kind of sympathy so much. He was invited to the immigration, to whatever very political body, immigration authorities, and they asked him what does he think about Karl Marx. And he said that he is not qualified to judge. He doesn't know enough to judge, which is understandable. He actually was so focused on mathematics that he wasn't focusing on other things. But he thought that Karl Marx was a great man, and it was kind of the most horrible, one of the most horrible things which you probably can say.
So his visa was cancelled, I think.
What happened, he went to Amsterdam to one of their conferences, and he wasn't allowed back. And was in the peak of McCarthyism, and which is very, very ironic. And actually, I was thinking about it in the last few days, kind of like, when I think about the period of time, I almost try to transport myself, like teleport myself into this thing. And so how I feel and what it was and how it kind of connects to us. And unlike other parts of history, some, for example, when we spoke about Archimedes and Fermat, it's slightly more difficult because it's quite much further away from us. But Erdos, it's actually a generation of my grandparents, great-grandparents, and I see that because that time, and what comes to the attention is very, very funny. In America, a lot of kind of McCarthyism was against European Jews who came and who had quite left-wing ideas.
They brought this. It's true. They brought a lot of communist ideas.
But not everybody, and not all of them were like that. And so it was a lot of kind of hatred and persecution was against them. And at the same time, their cousins in Soviet Union were persecuted for being pro-American. So it's kind of you damn if you do, you damn if you don't. But actually,
you always have it out as Jews, We can never be right.
And the interesting thing is that now, kind of 2 generations later, 3 generations later, this physical connection between, say, American Jews and Russian Jews somehow is weaker because generation passed. So, for example, some Soviet Jews would have like 4th cousins or 3rd cousins in America whom they completely lost. But that time, in generation of my grandparents, practically every Soviet Jew would have a 1st cousin in America.
Amazing.
And practically every American Jew, most of them, would have a 1st cousin in the Soviet Union. So basically, that was in a way that the people kind of divided families, were persecuted for their next of kin in different country, which people were not absolutely responsible for.
The opposite reasons, but it's all the same anyway. I think it all comes from the same mind and torso. I want to speak about the character himself, Paul Erdos. I really like how, again, non-materialistic he was. Very like a monk, a mathematical monk, priest, if you want to call it. He was dedicated just to mathematics. He didn't care about anything. He lived in his mind. Of course, he collaborated with other people, but he was just interested in pushing the boundaries of mathematics. Within the papers that I checked, there are so many different subjects. It's amazing the spectrum of fields that he was involved with. And he used to travel from one continent to another continent, knock on the door of someone and said, "You are the right mathematician for me. I want to work with you, and let's solve this problem." He was a problem maker in a good way. He made problems and he solved and he suggested problems that should be solved. And he used the money by, like, for example, the Wolf Award to give it to as incentive to other people. He told them, if you solve this problem, I'll give you the money, some money.
Yes, well, basically, you bring quite a lot of different issues here.
Yes.
So one issue is that he was really one of these people who were not interested in money. He reminds me a few groups of people. He reminds me Diogenes, the guy
I grew up admiring
who
him.
was
Lived in a barrel.
who lived in the barrel apparently. It actually wasn't as simple, but who said to Alexander the Great,
Yes,
when he offered him some help, how would you help me? So I would love to help you. And he said, look, just don't put me in the shadow. Just so basically, he was not interested.
You're blocking the sun or something like that.
Blocking the sun or something like that. Yes. So basically, that was the only interest with his from great person. And also he was very humble, because the Alexander said that he was a great king, Alexander, and Diogenes was saying that he was a dog or something like this. So that was one of the examples. But I also want to bring some spiritual connections, some mystical connection. One is what is very interesting for me when I'm thinking about him. It's not even how much he produced, which is also very important.
Mm-hmm.
It was that he saw actually the best things which he can find, that he was kind of taking from the God's book. He said the God has a mystical book, and he draws these ideas from the God's mystical book. So, and I was thinking about it, meditating about it, and it's interesting that all languages which I know, nobody says we invent a solution, or we kind of create a solution. We find a solution. We discover a solution. So there is a very deep understanding, and languages in a way very good. They often kind of give certain very deep reality. So when we talk about mathematical, physical truth, and mathematical truth in this particular context, we see that it already exists, and we need to bring it from somewhere. It was like, if you remember the story about Prometheus, who was the hero of the Greek mythology, who had to steal
the fire
from the gods.
Yeah.
So
that comes to Pandora, no? That was part of that's the later story with Pandora. That was the punishment of the gods.
It was a punishment as well.
It's another Trojan horse in a way, yes.
Yes, but he needed to steal. Yeah. So basically, in a way, our Professor Dr. Erdos had to steal things from the God's book, which was very good. Was another thing which is very interesting in him. He, yes, and what you start to mention, he really for years, basically when he was thrown out of America, he went to Israel, to Technion in Haifa for about 10 years, and then he decided to leave Technion as well. He was only 51 or so, and after that, from about like 1964 until 1996, so what we did, 32 years, he was really traveling from one country to another. As you said, he chose...
A mathematical nomad, unbelievable.
Yes, and he would come there and he would knock the door and said, my brain is open.
Yeah.
And he also described himself as a machine which consumes coffee.
And makes it into theorems.
And makes theorems. So he's kind of the production of these things. And in a way, I would say it is completely amazing for amount of stimulant, amount of coffee he consumed. And remember, he died in 1996, not in 2023. He lived quite 83 years, which for that time it was still long for most people, but on the stimulants it was amazing. So one of the reasons of that, I believe very strongly, that really when you work either on spiritual subjects or you work on the kind of very intellectual subject, it somehow extends your life.
Energy, longevity, all this.
Because you wake up to something. You don't wake up and think, scratching your kind of back of your head with what I do today.
Exactly. You're not just a treadmill rat. Sorry for that. I'm just saying, you are very much connected with something so high and so inspiring. So you're constantly motivated to live. You want to live, to continue.
And the way he was, I wouldn't say he was a prophet, right? But he, to an extent, prophesied how he ends up. Because he was saying, every day when he was talking, he would be saying, okay, what will we do with this? He said, okay, we'll continue tomorrow if I live.
Yeah.
So, and that's how he died. He basically died suddenly from heart attack or whatever. When he had, died in Poland, Warsaw, and he had a ticket to Vilnius to the next presentation. So he really died on a journey as a good nomad he was. And you mentioned the monks, you mentioned the priests. He really reminds me also the tradition which existed in Greece, in kind of Christian Greece, and then in Eastern Europe, of people whose success, whose achievement was, in a way, that they did good things to people without charging for them. So Erdos was absolutely not interested. He wasn't interested in the prizes. He wasn't interested in money.
Mm-hmm.
He wasn't interested to building a house, building a family. In a way, he saw the family and all these connections as the basically time waster. Because if he was married, if he had children, he had family, house, it inevitably would take some time from him. 99.9%.
His pursuit, which is mathematics.
Which he only slept to 3 hours.
Yeah, well, he had an incredible stamina with mathematics. I want to say another thing, sorry, Misha, about, there are two types of mathematicians, I believe, and I can understand it. Take someone like Gregory Perelman, another idealistic mathematician, won $1 million, solved the only one to solve the millennium problem, Poincare conjecture. They offered him the Fields Medal, he didn't want to take it. But the fine difference between him and Erdos, and that's an interesting point I would like to talk about, is that some mathematicians can be great collaborators, some of them need to work isolated. Perelman is the other case. He is the one who works by himself. He doesn't. I'm sure that he communicated, but not necessarily collaborated. It has to do with the personality of someone. I mean, if I was, probably I would work by myself. I think so.
I'm probably contrary. I like to work with people. So basically, in mathematics, unlike many other subjects, and you can see it like with a easy glance on the mathematical publications, and say biological publication or other publications. And I never saw statistics. It's very anecdotal for me looking at the different subjects. Mathematicians usually prefer, or bigger percentage of mathematicians prefer to work on their own.
Mm-hmm.
While very often in some other subjects, maybe because of the nature or whatever it is, you would have like 5 names, sometimes 10 names, sometimes 7 names or whatever under the same article. And people have kind of different contributions to make. So mathematics is, and so in a way, if Erdos would be working in other field, maybe it would be less surprising of his kind of amount of collaborative power he had. But for mathematicians it was quite unusual, but good unusual. I believe it's great.
No, I like it. I'm not against it. I'm just talking about difference in personality. Let's just finish, if you may, with the subject. You remember we spoke of course about Pierre de Fermat, about the last theorem, how simple it is to explain it to people, how difficult it was to prove. Erdos, he made a comment about the Collatz conjecture. Mm-hmm. You know the Collatz conjecture. So simple to explain, difficult to prove. Some people say, he said that there is not enough mathematics to explain it yet. Just briefly, let's say, it's take any number and try to reduce it by division and get 1 at the end of it. So if you start with an even number, then you just divide it by 2. If you got an odd number, then you take the number, multiply by 3 plus 1, divide by 2, and you should reach 1. Everything I tried always reached 1. Supercomputers always reach 1, but no one proved that you will only reach 1 for the infinite numbers, the ocean that we got of numbers. Mm-hmm. Or he said, it's another beautiful example of number theory problem that is so simple to understand, so difficult to prove. Let's finish with that. Tell me your take.
No, I think again.
Not necessarily about the Collatz. Yes.
Well, so basically, Erdos was one of these people, mm-hmm. as Fermat, as Euclid, like all of them. That's kind of my take of these things, who saw things they didn't need computer powers to prove it for them. They kind of see things ahead.
Yes,
it was exactly like Euclid, were looking for 2000, which we said last time, right? Euclid saw something, he
Perfect
formulated,
numbers.
yes,
In that
which
case.
nobody could prove
Mhm.
until Euler came. I think E and E, right? Euclid Euler.
Yeah.
So until 2000 years, who? That's prophecy. That's in a way prophecy, in a way, right? So who of us can say something, and for 2000 years nobody can prove it, or can prove only after it. So for Erdos, he did not need a proof of the computer calculation. He just saw things. Having said that's very interesting. There was some in other parts of mathematics. There was some conjectures of Euler and other people who really predicted something to happen, and the counterexample was found in our times.
Yeah.
But that's quite rare, and well, we see with the Erdos. But it looks like now, for me, kind of again intuitively, if with all computer power which we have at the moment, the counterexample wasn't found, I somehow doubt it will be found.
Me as well. I think that yes, I agree. I'm thinking it's pretty similar to what you say, the way I think about it. But I'm not sure. I'm trying to be very careful with mathematics. I'm always very cautious, you know.
Absolutely, absolutely. But interesting thing, what I'm kind of posing the question about Erdos, was he like one-off, or was it kind of this generation when people really were very unsettled, where people like, especially of him, were kind of having like European Jewish background?
It's very Jewish thing, you know, the traveler, the guy who doesn't, the person who doesn't have actually a state, a country, a land, constantly need to be on the move. And even his relationship, you know, I don't know so much about his beliefs. I know that he used the SF, the Supreme Fascist. Have you heard about it?
Yes, he wasn't the only one. Basically, that
Yeah.
was kind of, again, I would say it was a bit of Greek things when these heroes were fighting gods. So he saw how, as some other mathematicians, they saw that God is kind of stingy. He has all the beautiful things, and rather giving to people, giving to Erdos in a simple way, they had to slave for that. They have to work for that in order to get. Because in mathematical life, as life, probably practically every scientist and every maybe even musician and artist, you have moment of supreme joy, but you sometimes work for months and years for that. So he probably what he wanted to God to be a little bit more generous, that he would have much more joy, a bit less work. I don't know. I'm putting
He said
my
it
words
was also a joke, you know. He used it, but I think there was truth in that, you know. That it's a joke, but there is a truth. But I also think I see a very Jewish angle in that, despite being very assimilated. It's interesting, but you know that requires, I think, another podcast because
No,
there is
that's a
some.
very interesting. I was thinking as well why kind of assimilated Jews have been very successful in these particular things. What make them different from the other population? Because, for example, if somebody would come from extremely religious background, yes, they were brought up very, very differently. But people like Erdos, like many other European Jews who came from very assimilated families, religion in their lives, neither their childhood nor in their kind of adult years played particular role. Why were they so successful? What was kind of secret of their success statistically? So that's very interesting, and actually I will continue thinking about it and maybe reading about it, and we might.
I think I got an answer, but that's for
Okay.
next time. It was pleasure,
Okay.
Professor Misha. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Take care.
Thank you.